Episode 65, Lost in Space, with attorney and legislator Hochman-Vigil.
I can remember being a little baby and sitting on his lap while he piloted us through the sky. And I knew then that I was hooked. If it's something that you know is your dream and it's something you want to pursue, just don't ever give up. Never, never, never give up, and do whatever you can to pursue that goal, even if it's, really hard at times.
Welcome, fellow STEM enthusiasts, to the STEM Southwest podcast, your source for all things science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This podcast is designed to create STEM connections, cohesion, and elevation. This is a place where STEM enthusiasts gather to learn about some amazing STEM rock stars and activities of the Southwest and beyond that are impacting the world. If you have longed to be united with your fellow STEM nerds, then you've found your people here at STEM Southwest. And now, here are your hosts, Bob and Shelley.
Hey everyone, this is Bob.
And I'm Shelley.
Together we are
STEM Southwest.
So Shelley, what do you think about the episode name I gave it for our guest today?
Yes, well, hopefully people are cracking up a bit and see a little bit of our humor.
Or not.
For sure.
See?
Well, I think it's kind of fun. We didn't mention this last time that we did our first video, our second video, but we're doing it here in our home, right? So welcome to our home.
This was an undisclosed location.
It was an undisclosed
now
location.
Now it's disclosed.
Shoot. Okay, people probably couldn't figure out it was our home before. I'm
now
pretty sure.
Can.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so it's been fun. We kind of moved our operations home. Sometimes we've in the past, when we've done audio, we've done lots of different places, wherever it's convenient. It's gotten a little bit easier to set up here at home and have our regular setup. But we'd love to hear back. I would love to. Wouldn't you love to hear from our listeners?
Oh, yeah.
About what they think about our new videos that we're putting out, as well as any guests that they'd like to see us interviewing, or what they're thinking.
They can send their comments not just to STEM Southwest, but also to the YouTube postings, because there's a place to put comments.
Yes. So, and for those people that start interacting and commenting, whether you make a comment on the Facebook page or ask a question, send us a message, and we would love to interact with you, but then we'd also love to send you maybe a little bit of STEM Southwest swag. What do you think?
Sure. What swag are you talking about?
Probably stickers.
Yes.
I'm true confessions there. But we do have a lot of really fun and cool stickers.
Yeah, but let's move on. Let's talk, give a little intro to our guest that we had today. Why that name of the episode might be funny or not funny.
You want me to explain it?
No, let me in.
Okay, explain it.
So I'm
sure they all want to know.
Well, we had Hochman-Vigil as our guest today.
Right.
She's an attorney, and she practices aviation and space law. Hence the name Lost in Space.
Yes, that's so clever, honey.
Maybe I should never come up with another episode name again.
Hardest part of the job, figuring out the episode names. Anyway, it is kind of funny. The topics we talked about were fun, but I don't know that they were funny. They were interesting, and she's just finished the second week of the legislative session here in the state of New Mexico. And so we were able to talk a little bit about what's coming up, what she kind of sees is going on.
STEM is big on the agenda this session.
Well, I think we're going to find that both at the state level, but also it's going to be big at the national level as things start convening and people start working towards goals. And of course, we want in on that, right? It's so important. That's part of our nonprofit mission, is to serve more families with STEM. And certainly it'd be greater than average, our for-profit company, our LLC, that we're serving more families. And if there's an opportunity to do more of that, we want to be part of it.
Well, and I hate always bringing this up, and it does come up during the interview, but we're still in COVID. It hasn't went away. 2021, the changing of the clock didn't change anything, and I think it's probably going to grow more of a need. STEM will become more of a need as far as innovation, and what Be Greater Than Average is doing online, what R4 creating is also supporting online platforms to try to get us through this period of time where so many people are locked up at home.
Right. So I think that, as I shared with Day, that STEM is a bipartisan issue. We should all care about it. It makes an impact on our economy. It makes an impact on our world. And so I encourage everybody to reach out and take part in democracy in some way, shape, or form, in a way that's productive and gonna be meaningful and address agendas through those channels. Some of us may not even know how to do that, but learn more about how to do that. And I do think that there's a lot more innovation happening. We find that with Be Greater Than Average, thinking about summer camps and things coming up, our secret is out. We're partnering with Electric Playhouse, right? And it's the word is out that we're going to start in-person robotics leagues, but we're also doing so much online to support education and STEM enrichment for students, and not just students here in the state, but students across the country.
I think you need to take a step back. You said the word is out. And I'm suspecting there are people listening and hearing this for the first time. Can you kind of share an impetus for this robot league that you're talking about?
Absolutely. Well, that Electric Playhouse is here in Albuquerque. They are set to grow, and they opened up about a month before COVID started. If you haven't heard of Electric Playhouse, listeners, you can go back and listen to our podcast interview with John Mark Collins, the founder of Electric Playhouse. And it's just an interactive play space. His desire really was to create a fun, interactive, tech-based play space for families and people to get together and create community. And so on top of that, we're layering our expertise with robots, and people are signing up. So instead of the old-fashioned bowling league, well, now you can sign up and come compete BattleBot style with robots against one another. And
you have multiple divisions as far as adults,
absolutely.
Students, and...
Yes, so you can do the 21 and over adult-only division, the family division. We're going to have a lot of different opportunities. I'm so excited about it. And the response from the community has been overwhelming. So if you're not on the waiting list yet, I would tell you to go get on the waiting list. We'll include a link here, but you can go to Electric Playhouse website /bots and be able to sign up to be on the waiting list. We're also looking for sponsors. So if you're out there wanting to support something that's super fun, incredibly innovative, and so engaging, I would say reach out. Let us know, because we are currently looking for some of the best sponsors to support that.
And you mentioned that they are growing. So while they are based in Albuquerque, they're going to other markets.
Right. This will be a national event eventually.
Yes.
And so, at the same time, we're learning a lot with our students online as they compete in online robotics competitions and compete against kids from every corner of the globe. And that's been really exciting. So I think a lot of companies are looking at ways they can be innovative, still deliver quality experiences, and serve their communities. And so it's exciting.
And I didn't want to miss your earlier comment about it, STEM being a bipartisan issue. This is more my corniness. So basically, it's not a blue versus red.
No.
In New Mexico, it's a red versus green, that being the chili. That's where the controversy comes in.
Maybe STEM is a purple issue.
A purple issue?
Red and blue together.
Oh, I would think. Okay, I'll go with that one. I'm still stuck in the chili thing, so there we go.
Okay, the chili analogy. All right, well, anyway, so we also have, Be Greater Than Average. We have a lot coming up. STEM Southwest podcast. We got a lot of exciting interviews coming up. And so please share, learn, grow with us.
Well,
Communicate with us. Let's stay in touch. I think that is so important right now. Our phone number's out there. Give us a call. If you don't want to send a message, give us a call. We'll have a conversation, and let's plow into 2021 in a whole new way with new energy, renewed vision, and knowing that COVID and a global pandemic is not going to stop us.
No, and keep on the lookout for the nonprofit as well, our For Creating, which there is a lot on the plate.
Absolutely.
There's going to be a lot happening with that as well.
Yeah,
so you're going to hear
so
a
much
lot.
3D printing innovation with the nonprofit. I'm really excited about that. So if people are interested in 3D printing, one of the things that I think is so cool is the 3D printing that we're doing in space. 3D printed was an innovation that happened because of the space industry. We can't send everything up in orbit with our astronauts, but we could send a 3D printer and they could have digital files to create so many things that are needed while they're up there. That's pretty exciting to me.
Wow, you just gave me some weird idea. I go off on these tangents. When the world starts opening up and we have more travel, could we maybe just have our 3D clothes printed and everything else when we get to our destinations and reduce the baggage we have to bring on airplanes? But that's me going off another.
Yeah, well, that's something you could talk to Day about, perhaps.
Yes.
Our guest today, she is just so full of energy and passion, and especially for the space and aviation industry. I love her story of the aviation heritage that she has. A lot of our guests talk about how they come into their careers because of their family. She is no different than a lot of our guests, where, as a baby, as an infant, she was sitting on her father's lap as he flew airplanes and seeing the world from a whole different angle.
I also think it's neat how she went and saw the larger world and came back home because she loves this place that we call home.
Yes. She is one of our boomerangs, right? Where she went out into the world, learned, and then brought back home those skills and is using it to help us just elevate everything. And we've got a lot to elevate. We got Virgin Galactic set to launch this year, and just so many other things. I mean, if anyone has listened to any of our podcast interviews, they're bound to have listened to one of them that we've done about space or aviation.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things where they do their launch here, that Sir Richard Branson's going to be doing another one here in the States. So it's going to be exciting when that happens.
Yes, because it will happen very soon, 2021. All right, well, should we just roll right into, or fly right in to this interview?
Wow, you're trying to make a funny one. Okay, we'll go with that one.
That's no worse than
Lost. Thank you.
Let's
get into it. I'm excited.
All right, join us.
Yeah. Shelley, I am so looking forward to meeting our guest today. Her name is Day Hochman-Vigil.
Yes, Representative Day Hochman-Vigil.
You're stealing my thunder.
Oh, sorry.
Back off. So she is an attorney with a particular practice that I know we're going to learn more about during our interview today. And she is also a representative for the state of New Mexico, the 15th District House member. And so, Day, we are so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I am excited, extremely excited to be here as well. And I am just enamored with everything that you're both trying to do with this podcast. There's so much to talk about in terms of STEM and STEM education in New Mexico. And yeah, just super, super stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Day, the first thing I'm going to start off with, who are you? I mean, we know who you are, but for our audience, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your STEM story, and we'll just turn it over to you.
Sure. So, when I try to explain myself and who I am to others, I usually start with the fact that I am an aviation enthusiast turned aviation lawyer / pilot. I was accidentally elected to the New Mexico State House. I was asked to run in an election in 2018 against a very well-known opponent. It was an open seat at the time, and we ended up winning against all odds. And so I was thrust into the, politisphere of New Mexico politics, which is an interesting experience in its own right. And so I kind of spend my time balancing those two priorities along with my family. I'm married to my husband of 2.5 years now, Chuck Vigil. He's also a lawyer. He specializes in employment law and kind of complex civil litigation stuff. And then I also have a passion for music and automobiles. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
So what I'm learning offhand is you're very humble.
Oh,
you have a very interesting background, and so why don't you tell us a little about your particular practice you're involved with in law?
Sure. So I specialize in aviation and space law, both in the regulatory context and in litigation. And I ended up picking up this specialization. I graduated law school in 2011, which was the single worst year for new law graduates in the entire country. We were coming off of the Great Recession. It was really hard to get first-year associate positions. I looked everywhere I could. I ended up, I clerked for a judge for a little while in Santa Fe. And then I ended up landing a position with a civil defense firm and learned that such a thing as aviation law existed. I worked on a case with an aviation law component on it. And through that experience, ended up getting connected with the Institute of Air and Space Law at McGill University Law School. Ended up getting to know the executive director at the time pretty well. And after the case we were working on concluded, he said to me, I can't get women to come to my program. What do I need to do to get you to come to McGill? And so I kind of, I said, well, just ask. And so I ended up moving to Montreal, Canada for about 18 months and procured what is called an LLM or a Master in Law degree in aviation and space law. And then I ended up moving to Washington, D.C. from there, practicing aviation regulatory law with a mid to large size law firm. We did mostly Part 129, 14 CFR Part 129 work, which is foreign commercial carrier airlines. And it was like drinking from a fire hose. And I learned so much about the industry and, practice law in front of the, Department of Transportation and the NTSB, CBP. You want any acronym, federal acronym, you want to think of that could be tangentially related to aviation. I learned and practiced in front of them. So did that for a little while, decided that I didn't want to be in Washington, D.C. anymore because I was working so much, my hair was falling out. And I wanted to come back home because New Mexico is, I was born and raised here and my family and friends were here. And so came back to New Mexico, practiced law with a friend of mine for a little while, and then had the opportunity to open up my own practice centering on aviation and space law because I am indeed, it seems like the only lawyer in New Mexico who has this specialization and certification. So that's kind of how I ended up where I am today, while also serving in the New Mexico House of Representatives. So balancing those priorities and then bringing my expertise in transportation and aviation and infrastructure up to the Roundhouse in Santa Fe.
So is this a large practice area? You've done a lot in it in DC and here. Are there a lot of attorneys practicing this law? Is it a growing area of law, or what's your perspective?
There's a couple who have dabbled in it who I've met with. Aviation law is a strange animal, and then it's kind of like an amalgamation of various other areas of law. It's contracts and employment and, choice of law and international law and administrative law. And so if you have experience in any number of those areas, you can learn to do aviation law, but it's so esoteric, it just kind of takes time. But what's really exciting about New Mexico is we have so many things going on, especially in commercial space, that the more we're kind of investing in these areas, the more interest we're getting and the more kind of traffic we're seeing come into New Mexico. So, it's not like I made the decision to come back to New Mexico to practice aviation law because I knew it was going to be a particularly lucrative area, but my timing was absolutely perfect. And now I have more work than I can shake a stick at, because there's just so many really fascinating things happening in New Mexico. And we're trying really hard up in the legislature to kind of identify and put New Mexico on the map as a global hub for aerospace development, particularly commercial space. So now's the
Absolutely.
time. Yeah.
It's so exciting because we've had the opportunity to interview many people who are in the space and aeronautic industry here within the state, and everything from the Spaceport America and Virgin Galactic to the small startups that are creating technology that are changing and impacting the world as we know it, and the safety of the Space Force, and just so many things happening, like you said. But can you share just a few of them that kind of come to mind that you think are interesting and that our listeners might be intrigued by?
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, you've already mentioned Virgin Galactic. I mean, that's the obvious, the obvious one to start with. Virgin Galactic is, our anchor tenant at Spaceport America. We are working with them to become flight ready here for the first manned, suborbital space flight, commercial space flight here in the next year or so. Fingers crossed. They're doing amazing things. We also have a lot of work in broadband infrastructure. There's a stratospheric airship manufacturer called Sky Inc. SCEYE. They are building stratospheric airships to provide, anywhere from LiDAR geomapping to broadband infrastructure, 5G modeling throughout, 100% coverage throughout the state. They're working with a consortium of other telecommunication companies to provide coverage to the Navajo Nation and, above. We also have companies like Spin Launch who are working to, let me see if I can get this correct. They are a satellite launching company, but they use a specific type of launching mechanism that instead of strapping a satellite on top of a rocket, they actually use centrifugal motion and force to launch a satellite, almost like with a rubber band type mechanism into space. Really fascinating stuff. I mean, I went and toured their facility, and I need a lot more brain power to just even begin to understand how any of that works from a science perspective. We also have, let's see here. Gosh, there's so many. I mean, we have companies that are, again, working in the broadband sphere.
That's really been highlighted, the broadband issues, not just here within our state and within the region, but across the world, right? Particularly serving people in remote areas, rural areas, that as kids are trying to jump online and do online school, and parents are maybe trying to work online, there's just a big need that has really been, I think, highlighted because of all of the pandemic restrictions and the things that we've had to do. So that's interesting.
Yeah. In times of trouble like this, innovation kind of is highlighted as a positive aspect of necessity is the mother of invention, right? And so with all of our kids being out of school and having to turn to internet schooling resources, I mean, the need is there now to figure out these issues that we've been confronting for decades. But, with I guess the political will now and the demand from our constituents to find solutions to these problems, the time has really become ripe for the implementation of these types of solutions now, and for the legislature to put the money behind it to make it work. And so it's actually a really exciting time, despite, the difficult circumstances that we've all been facing. Oh, I also wanted to mention before I move on, there's also a lot of exciting developments in the UAS, which is the Unmanned Aerial Systems sphere in New Mexico. Mm-hmm. We have companies like Silent Falcon, who are building incredible drone technology to help with ground surveillance and DoD applications. There's a lot of great technology in New Mexico, as you both know.
Oh yes.
Yes, amazing.
Not to mention the labs. Can't forget the labs.
Right. Well,
they get upset if we left them out.
That's true. That's true. So everything from huge giant labs to small startups doing incredibly innovative things. And so how does that then track in terms of the work that you do with with the law. And like you said, there's more work than you can handle at this point. What does typical day look like, or what are some of the projects that are really taking your time and that you're focusing on?
Sure. So I have to split my time between obviously my law practice and my legislative obligations. And so,
Mhm.
first of all, I couldn't do this without the help of like the most amazing staff. First, I want to mention my constituent services director, Jill Myers, who I think you both know. Jill
Yes,
is incredible in her own right. She's an aviation
absolutely.
consultant, and she and I got connected through our mutual passion for aviation, and she helps me run my life. I wouldn't be able to do it without her on a daily basis. I also have help from Gabby Pineda, who is my current legislative intern, and she's just kind of helping keep me afloat. I receive hundreds of emails a day related to either work or legislative stuff, and so they kind of help me keep organized, which is the most important part. And then also, client expectations. Every single one of my clients know that I am a legislator, and if I can't pick up your phone call right away, I will get back to you when I can. It's particularly challenging during the legislative session because I have to be up in Santa Fe, and the legislative stuff comes first. I don't know if you both know this, but New Mexico is the only remaining voluntary legislature left in the country, and so we don't get paid to serve as legislators. We get a per diem, and that's it. But the rest of it is a completely voluntary role. So having to, balance that with having to earn a living. My husband is a saint. I don't know how he how he puts up with me on a daily basis.
Truly,
But
truly
yeah,
a team, huh? Truly a
we're
team.
never bored. We'll put it that way.
Well, basically you're putting your hold on for at least 60-day sessions. You go up to Santa Fe and you have to, that's when it really becomes intense, trying to juggle your work and then do the will of the people the people you're serving your district.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's about having good help. I have an amazing associate attorney. His name is Brent Chapman, and every one of my clients knows that he's available, and he takes care. He mans the shop while I'm away, and wouldn't be able to do it without him either.
Fantastic. Well, I think that that's a real testament to your leadership and the power of team. But
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about that aviation piece. I think you mentioned pilots. Tell us a little bit about that, and what even got you interested and intrigued in that area.
My father was a very intense and intriguing figure, very strong personality. He was actually a psychiatrist, and he had a lifelong fascination with aviation. And he was a pilot. I think when I was growing up, we had a little Cessna. I think he had a Beechcraft at first, and then like a Cessna 172, and we would shuttle back and forth, on other friends' planes and whatnot. I can remember being a little baby and sitting on his lap while he, piloted us through the sky. And I knew then that I was hooked.
Mhm. Wow.
And it was just a way that I kind of, bonded with my dad really, because we just would talk about airplanes all day long. And it was the same thing with cars too. That was kind of our deal. We both loved airplanes and cars, and aviation is an all-encompassing hobby if you do it correctly. And I came from an aviation family because my grandfather was a pilot as well, World War II. So
Wow.
it was just always it was just always in my blood. I really never liked the scent of perfume. I just loved the scent of kerosene. And we would go to the airport when I was little, and we would plane spot, and my dad taught me all the different types of airplanes, and the call signs, and air traffic control rules and stuff like that. And it just became a part of who I am as a
Yeah.
person. And
How
then when I had the opportunity to marry what I did as a professional to it, I mean, it was just a no-brainer. I don't go to work every day. I just go to play, and I'm very, very blessed and lucky in that way.
I'm a firm believer in that for sure. That if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, right?
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
so you are a pilot. How often do you get to fly?
I haven't gone up since I want to say 13. It's been a
Oh,
long time.
wow.
Ever
Wow.
since I started practicing law seriously, I haven't really been
Yeah.
able to get in an airplane, other than the Civil Air Patrol keeps bugging me because, all those guys are my friends, and I've run a couple of bills for them up at the legislature, and they said, you are an honorary Civil Air Patrol woman. You can come fly with us if you want to. When's that going to happen? And I said, oh, I need to get my medical up to date. But they'll get me eventually. They will. Maybe once I retire from the legislature, I'll have some time.
There you go. So you're not flying up to Santa Fe every day. You may be flying by vehicle, or staying up there. A lot of legislators stay up in Santa Fe. I can't imagine if you didn't. Many come home on the weekends or whatnot. And we've been fortunate here, STEM Southwest, to interview several legislators as well. And it's certainly, being that kind of community servant takes so much dedication and time and energy. But what is it that draws you there?
You have to love it. I didn't know that I was destined to do this work really until I was thrown into it. Mostly not by my own volition, but once I kind of got up there and all the pieces fell into place, I kind of saw that my personality and just my body of work and experience really lent themselves to the legislative process. I'm blessed in that I naturally kind of understand it, and I'm a people person by personality and trade. I read people for a living, and it just makes sense to me, this work. I've been able to really get a lot of great legislation passed. We have more legislation that we're going to get passed this year, some really complex, reforms that have been years in the making. And I was fortunate enough to be put on the House Appropriations and Finance Committee this year, and we control the purse. It's a very demanding committee to be on. We basically, put together a budgetary framework and then fill in the budget from there, and then pass it on to the rest of the legislature. So, it's a daily obligation, and we hear, we talk numbers with every single state agency and talk about their performance indicators, and then we talk to other folks about the impacts of the decisions that we're making. And it's really just a deep dive into the state of New Mexico and how we conduct our business. And every day I'm there, I just feel incredibly fortunate to have this opportunity to affect positive change. And it's just a blessing. Every day I'm up there, I have to pinch myself. I can't believe that I'm the one doing this work, and it's very important work, and it's important to stay focused, even though it's really hard to do that, especially during a virtual session when you're on Zooms for like 18 hours a day.
Wow. Yeah. So I don't know, some of our listeners, I'm sure, have never been in a legislative session. We've been fortunate over the past 4-5 years or so to go up to the session. We homeschool our kids, so there were years that I took them up just to kind of visit. But then the robotics program has been, the students have driven robots on the floor of the House of Representatives, and
so cool.
Multiple times. It's been so fun to be recognized by legislators and to be part of that process, like the energy and
there's a gravitas to it almost.
Yeah.
Like you kind of feel the importance of the work going on. And
yes, that's right. Right. Like, that this is important work. Right. And so I can't imagine the impact that the COVID-19 has had on that process. Like you said, instead of 18 hours in session and maybe breaks and talking with colleagues or even getting to interact with your constituents, maybe they're bringing you a plate of cookies, but now it's on Zoom or if you're in session. I believe here in New Mexico, at least, they've limited. There are no people that are not necessary people there on the floor, right? And how's that impacted things in your experience from, say, last year to even this year?
Well, it's even weirder than you would imagine, because like, for instance, opening day. So, this country is facing so many systemic issues all at once, and it's kind of trickling down to affecting everybody. And so, like, on the first day of the session, we were debating whether or not we should even be anywhere near the roundhouse, because we were facing historic threats of basically insurrection. And so people were thinking, is it even safe for us to be there? And they ended up, putting a fence around the Capitol and again, banning, like you said, all non-essential staff and personnel. And, I got there to be sworn in by the Secretary of State, and I had to go through 3 checkpoints. There was a tank, a National Guard tank. I had to show my ID, probably 5 different times. I mean, I felt extremely safe, but it weighed heavy on my heart because the Roundhouse is traditionally the people's house. And there's, a ton of people, it's teeming with people and constituents and, children learning about the democratic process. And we have all sorts of memorials and celebrations of our cultural heritage and all the different amazing groups of people that come together to make New Mexico what it is. And none of that is there this year. And we have been in the building, but we are together but apart. We're actively discouraged from being on the floor. The only people that should be on the floor at this time is leadership, and everybody else is taking meetings in their office. So we're convening via Zoom, and we're in the White House, in the Roundhouse, but we're not together in the Roundhouse. And it just kind of feels like a very strange dream almost. And it's a very kind of solemn, sad feeling, but at the same time we have to press on with the people's work that we've been entrusted to do. And it's very important to a lot of us to be there and to figure out a way to make it work, because we can't be deterred by, not only a once in a lifetime pandemic, but threats of violence and people that have an interest in scaring us away from the obligation we have from the people, for the people. So we're there and we're making the most of it, but it sure is weird.
And I guess I want to touch, you mentioned the pandemic. First of all, I'd say that your earlier comment about New Mexico being the last of the voluntary legislatures, it really has a different environment versus other places. It is more of a family atmosphere. It's really exciting to be there. And with respect to the pandemic, you and your husband had an issue back in November. With respect to COVID, could you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So my husband, late October, he fell ill and ended up getting testing positive for COVID-19. We have no idea where he got it. He basically just goes to his office sometimes during the week and back, and then occasionally to the grocery store, but somehow he picked it up. And I was actually working in Roswell at the time. I took him to get tested, and once he had the positive test return and I had a negative test return at the time, we separated. And so that was scary. And about a week into his illness, I tested a second time and I tested positive, and I said, well, I might as well move home. And thank God I did, because not more than a couple days later, my husband, who seemed to be doing okay, actually developed a cough, and he was just very tired and, not the sickest I've ever seen him or he's ever been in his life. But this one day he went to take a nap, and I went to check on him, and I found him blue in the face. So thank God we had, we have doctors in our family. And when we both got diagnosed with the COVID, they brought us a pulse oximeter, and I said, you look, can you put this on for me? We need to check your sat levels. And he came in, it was 64. And so at that point I said, okay, we're getting in the car.
Need some oxygen.
So I took him to the nearest hospital, and long story short, he ended up spending 18 days in the hospital. He was in ICU for 11 of those days, and he was a perfectly healthy, adult man, and it nearly killed him. He'd never been sick really before with anything in his life. And here we were, one of those families that was really impacted by it. I got kind of sick. I had a few symptoms that were manageable, basically just, extreme fatigue, but it was really scary because there was definitely a time, when we didn't know if Chuck, my husband, was going to make it.
Wow.
And out of kind of a familial solidarity, we made the decision to go public with our experience and our diagnosis, because we ourselves at one point had thought, like, this is a really unfortunate virus, and it seems like it could be terrible, but it hadn't really impacted us, and so we weren't taking it nearly as seriously as we should have been, because we didn't know anybody, right, who had been directly impacted. Yes. And so we thought, maybe if we went public with our story, that we could kind of bring that that gravitas, so that friends and people who knew us would take a moment to pause and reflect and say, this could really actually affect us. And I think for the most part, the story did its job, and we had so many people, wonderful people, reach out and express, sympathy and their, prayers for us. But at the same time, those same people would say, we didn't really take COVID seriously until you told your story, because if it could happen to you, then it could happen to us.
Right.
So,
Yes.
yeah, it was a tough time in our lives, but we got through it, and he's fine now. He's back at work. Doesn't seem to have any long-term effects. Same with me, but we're two of the lucky ones. I mean,
Right.
others
Right.
aren't so lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it does become so much more real when you know someone, right, who
Right.
has suffered. And certainly what a scary thing for you to go through as young, still young in your marriage. And so I appreciate that you're sharing that, for sure. I agree. A lot of people, maybe they don't know anyone yet. I actually had a cousin this past week that passed away from COVID. And
I'm so sorry.
so I think it's those things that, we just need to create awareness so that we do remind ourselves to take the best strategies and use the science that comes out of it. And it can be so confusing. And hopefully, I think for me, that we use it to bring people together as opposed to dividing, and not to be as divisive with it as it could potentially tempt us to be. But personalizing it, knowing personal stories, I think that helps bring us together and realize, oh yeah, there are people that we love and care about and know that actually are struggling with this.
Yeah, and it's touched everybody. And I know how, I have constituents who reach out to me every day saying, I'm sick of this. When are you going to open up? When is this going to be over? And it's tough, to tell them I'm not sure when this is going to end. But the most important part, in ensuring it will end, is by everybody doing their part.
Right.
And, the sooner everybody masks up and stays socially distant and, gets the vaccine when it's available to them, then the sooner we're going to be able to return back to normal. And, that one thing I know for certain, and my indefatigable belief in facts and science is what's kind of like leading me through this. And thank gosh we have leadership in the state of New Mexico that thinks the same way, and has really been science-based, and letting the facts and evidence lead the way.
So what's in the future? What's coming up? What are some of the new trends in aviation law that you're kind of preparing for, or that we need to be thinking about? And
I'd even take it a step further. What's taking place? What do you expect to happen up at the legislature this session with respect to STEM aviation?
I have introduced a state regulatory scheme for unmanned aerial systems, aircraft systems, UAS, in an attempt to actually stem some of the issues we've been seeing with illegal drone operations that harass people or violate their privacy rights, and also kind of help assist government in their deployment of drones. So we're working towards that. I'm also sponsoring what's called the Informed Consent Act, which is to allow Virgin Galactic some very prescribed immunity from liability in situations, surrounding commercial space flight, so that, so that we give them the business security they need to continue to call New Mexico home, and to, invest in commercialized space flight, so that we don't lose them to other states who try to be more competitive and offer a more competitive environment than we can. And so we're doing that. We're also have a lot of money, either through the CARES Act or otherwise, going towards broadband development. We've seen a serious shift in the legislature and interest in this particular subject, just because of what we talked about earlier. And we have an entire consortium of legislators working with industry leaders to actually figure this problem out and figure out a way for New Mexico to become 100% connected in a way that's meaningful, so that access to broadband is no longer another socioeconomic divider. between the haves and the have-nots in our state. So lots of technological advances there. And in the meantime, we continue to be a leader in biotech. I know that the governor's office is in their economic diversification panel is taking a serious look at how New Mexico can invest in the biotech industry to lure some producers here who otherwise might be outsourcing to other countries. I know that the COVID pandemic really brought a scare to everybody because we realized how our supply systems are volatile, and how we need to start figuring out a way to manufacture crucial supplies here in America so that we don't have the issues with preparedness that we saw in the past. And biopharmaceuticals is one of the areas where we feel like we can really be a leader in that realm. And then we continue to be a leader in tech transfer. We've got some great programs with the University of New Mexico and also New Mexico State with, assisting student entrepreneurs who have ideas for great technologies that could be transferred into the private sphere. And so, just making sure that we cultivate that knowledge and give them room to grow has also been a huge priority of the legislature, and I think we'll only continue to take up more oxygen in the air as we kind of move forward with planning for New Mexico's future.
That's wonderful. It's so exciting. And I think one of the things I love about STEM and science and technology is it truly is a bipartisan issue, right? We all care about broadband. We all care about so many of these things because we realize the economic impact of those. And so that's exciting.
Yeah, and it truly is bipartisan. And one thing I want to highlight in this kind of rancorous partisan atmosphere in which we find ourselves after the last presidential election is that if you go up to the New Mexico legislature, one thing that I think will surprise anybody is just the collegiality that we all have and the respect with which we treat one another, because we're not Republicans and Democrats, we're all colleagues. And I really do enjoy working with and reaching across the aisle, with my colleagues on the other side. And every single person there, I can say without hesitation, is there because they love our state and they want to do what they can in service to, make sure that we realize our full potential. I have not met a single human being serving in the New Mexico legislature who did not care deeply for their constituents and what we're doing. So I hope that gives people hope. We didn't see a single protest. I mean, even though we had National Guardsmen and tanks, they were never put to use, and everybody is still kind of acting in the spirit of, the Zia symbol of perfect unity and friendship. I've seen exchanges even virtually this session that kind of bring tears to my eyes because we all just, love and value each other as human beings.
Yeah.
So it's pretty
Beautiful.
cool to watch.
Yeah. I love that. There's not Democrats and Republicans. They're all New Mexicans, right? Serving the people of New Mexico. What about other states in the Southwest? Do you have the opportunity to work with other folks in the Southwest in any of these areas, or even through your law firm? Is there a relationship there? I know that you're the only aviation law person here in New Mexico. Are there others in the Southwest, or are you kind of the lone wolf?
There are others. I mean, a large concentration of aviation practice is actually in Washington, D.C., just because aviation is so federally centric with the FAA and everything. So I still have a lot of friends who are still in D.C. who still practice this area of the law. And we actually have a bunch of conferences. I mean, I think there's maybe 2,500 lawyers in the whole world who practice aviation law exclusively. And what's so cool about it is we're all friends and we all basically know each other's names. And before the pandemic hit, we all go to the same conference rounds and, and it's an international thing. I mean, I know that McGill holds, 2 different aviation law centric conferences every year. One is always in Montreal, and then another is usually in Shanghai or some other place. And so I'm incredibly lucky to have such an internationally kind of concentrated practice where it's not just issues that we see in the US, but we see around the world. When I was at McGill, I actually got to work at ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is the aviation arm of the UN. And got to meet people from all around the world who are interested in aviation regulation. And so it's, we're a brother / sisterhood. And even though we can't get together now this year, we still stay in touch. And, once we are allowed to travel again, I can't wait to get back to those conferences and assume leadership positions and do all that fun stuff, because it really is just one of the most interesting areas of the law, period.
Yeah.
And I'm very lucky to practice in it.
Awesome. Fantastic. So we work a lot with young people, as we've said. And one of the questions we always like to hear from our guests is, can you share a little bit about what could a young person expect if they pursued a career in aviation law, or, in this area? And do you have any tips for them in terms of that? If they're out there looking for internships or opportunities, what are your best tips for that day?
Totally. So my first tip would be, if you're interested in aviation law, call me. All of my
Okay.
information is up on the internet at nmlegis.gov, and also my law firm, DHV, Delta Hotel Victor Law, because we don't have enough people who practice in this area, and we certainly don't have enough women who practice in this area. And so if you love flight, space flight or otherwise, my first bit of advice would be, do what you can. Go to space flight camps in Alabama. Go visit, the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. Look up programs like, Girls in Aviation Day, which is run by, my wonderful friend Jill Myers.
Yes.
Just, find Facebook groups, find people that just talk about aviation. Go to airliners.net and join the photography forum. I mean, just do whatever you can to kind of gain exposure. And, if you find yourself in a position where, you think you want to pursue law, but you want to keep more of a science, STEM minded angle on it, then try and do both, work in a law firm, maybe as a clerk, or, figure out what the day-to-day life of a lawyer looks like. And then if you want to specialize further, like what I did, then find an aviation lawyer like myself and say, hey, can I take you out to lunch? Can you talk to me about what a day in your life looks like? What do you do mostly on a daily basis? And does this fit your particular skill set? It's also, I would encourage people not to get discouraged. I know that when I first went to McGill with the goal of becoming a specialist in aviation law, it was really hard. It's a really, really specialized, esoteric, corner of the universe, and there are not always jobs the first time around. So, that might mean you need to take an unpaid internship and work, in a law firm doing something else, or even work at a restaurant, whatever it takes. Don't ever
Right.
give up on your passions. Don't ever give up on your dream. It may not look the way you think it's going to. I mean, I know I had dreams of like becoming this high powered lawyer in Washington, D.C. doing, regulatory law. And I ended up back in New Mexico serving in the New Mexico House of Representatives. Like, life is really weird, right?
Yeah.
But
But at least
have
you
to
have
be.
hair now, right? You at least
I have
your hair's
hair.
not, your hair's not falling out.
I didn't end up a single cat lady, like riding the red line at 10 at night, listening to the sound of White House interns cry. So at least there's that. Everything happens exactly the way it's supposed to. You just have to make peace with the process. And if it's something that you know is your dream and it's something you want to pursue, just don't ever give up. Never, never, never give up, and do whatever you can to pursue that goal, even if it's, really hard at times.
Love that. Never ever give up. So what can our audience do to support you and the work that you're doing, Day?
Oh, geez, that's really nice. So a lot of folks are kind of mad about our decision to have an all virtual session this year. And I understand, because again, the legislative process normally is one that, takes place in person. It's really frenetic. There's no schedule. You just have to kind of be at the roundhouse and see where you find yourself. And so,
Right.
I do want to put it out there for folks that there is access to the process. We're making sure that there are opportunities for everyone to log into our committee hearings virtually and offer testimony. There's a process for that. If you don't have access to adequate internet, you can also call in. There's phone numbers. So I would even make the argument that through this type of access, even though it's not the normal type of access that we're usually used to, the process is even more accessible than it normally would be, because you don't have to jump in your car, and for some folks drive hours and hours and hours to Santa Fe to try and get a piece of the action. So if you are interested in the legislative process at all, if there are certain bills that you want to follow, please make sure to do that. nmlegis.gov, nmlegis.gov. All of the bills are listed there. All of the committee hearings and schedules are listed there. Like, take take an active part in your democracy. Reach out to folks like me. I know that I have on my website, a new day it's spelled out fornm.com. There is a place where you can submit a request for office hours to speak with me if there's an issue that you feel strongly about, or if you just want to know more about the process. I'm here for you. I serve the people, and that's part of my job, is to make sure the entire thing is accessible. So just, pay attention and be a part of it, because when everybody is a part of the legislative process, we have a better result. We come up with better laws. And, don't give up on us. It's going to be hard. The technology is going to fail. Proceedings will pause, but, we'll just slog through it. And one way or another, after the 60 days is over and the smoke clears, we'll have done our job.
Fantastic. Okay. All right. I was looking to Bob to see if he had any other questions before we wrap up, and just say thank you for your time and your commitment to this process. I love reach out and take part. It is important, and I do miss going up there myself, but yes, it's log on and take part. I agree with you. It probably has made the whole process is now open in new ways that it hasn't been open before. And so that's
now you
that's
can
awesome.
do it without even having to wear pants. So
Yes.
at least there's that.
In your pajamas and still show up, right?
As long as you don't
there's a
stand
silver
up.
lining.
Yes.
There's
Yeah,
a silver lining.
Remember not to stand up.
Yeah.
Yes. Fantastic. All right. Well, I think you've shared, and we're going to post in our show notes how people can reach out to you, and we'll share your information that way. And just thank you again for joining us today and sharing your passion. Obviously, this is something you care a lot about, and we're excited that maybe we can open up some opportunities for more students, more young people to head down a path similar to yours, and to continue to grow aviation in a way, and space opportunities here in the Southwest in a way that's going to benefit us economically, as well as just become more centric to the world and all that space and aviation has to offer. So thank you.
And thank you both for having me. It's been a pleasure. And again, anytime I can be of assistance to anybody, if you know someone who wants, mentorship, I love mentoring young people who are interested in those specific areas that I can, lend help with. And it's important that we have mentors and role models and people willing to give a hand up, so that we can continue this cycle of, homegrown, incredible STEM professionals coming from New Mexico who are going to change the world, and hopefully stay in New Mexico, or at least return to New Mexico, because I just love this state. I love and believe in this state. And I know that there's so many exciting things in the future for us. And thanks to people like both of you, we're on a good trajectory to kind of realize our potential. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you guys more about it later. If you ever want to welcome me back, this was really fun. So
absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, get some rest so you can be ready for a new week of online Zooming. And thank you again for being our guest.
Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Hey there, this is Shelley, and I am so glad that you have stopped by STEM Southwest. Can I ask a favor? If you've gotten some value out of our episodes, if you are just powered by nerd power and are excited about what we're doing, or if you're new to us and you've got just an interest, subscribe now to help us grow by doing that. Then take a moment and give us a review on iTunes or your favorite podcast player, because we could use your support and help. We are trying to raise up an army of STEM Southwest supporters. And then last, think about sharing our podcast with your friends, your families, or even complete STEM strangers, because, it's all about making the world a better place and having more STEM rock stars highlighted and connected. Stop by our website if you're looking for resources, and you're going to find a lot of things that's going to grow over time. So continue to stop on in and join us. Subscribe now and support STEMSW.com.
You've been listening to the STEM Southwest podcast. Nerd on, fellow STEM nerds.